What a beautiful song for such a beautiful thing. Good afternoon again, especially those who are just joining us. I remember the very first time that I heard that song. I was in my car driving from Charlotte, North Carolina, from visiting my aunt by myself, and I was right about where the North Carolina-Virginia borderline is. And that song came on, and I said to myself, what a wonderful song, and a wonderful rendition of it. In case you don't know or you don't remember, that is a remake of the George Benson version of the same song, which was the theme song from the movie The Greatest about Muhammad Ali. And it's such a wonderful song because it's really telling us what we need to do to manifest and to demonstrate the Christ in our lives each and every day. For us to be the person that we were meant to be, that it starts with us loving ourselves and being willing to be who we are and what we are and to follow what's inside of us. How many of you got the email that I sent out? Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what the email said that I sent out. Do any of you remember or have you seen a movie called Imitation of Life? Well, if you haven't, probably you young people haven't. And I don't know if it's going to be as relevant for you nowadays as it was then. But the story is a story about a young woman, or actually a family, two families, a white woman and a black woman who met each other and had a mutual need that needed to be fulfilled. The movie is set in the 1950s, and the climate in the country is very different than it is today. I mean, yes, we have issues with racism today, but it wasn't the Jim Crow kind of racism that they were experiencing at that time. The black woman's name was Annie Johnson, and Annie had a daughter named Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane was so fair that she could pass for white, and white she passed for, because she saw the advantage of being white in the society. In doing so, however, she rejected her identity, she rejected who she was, and she rejected her mother. And at one point, her mother came to visit her and say to her, honey, I just want you to know that I love you. And she said, Mama, please, please don't bother me anymore. I want you to leave and never come back because I don't want anybody to know who I am. I have this new life I've started and you're not a part of it. And her mother was devastated to be rejected by her daughter like that, a daughter that she loved so much. I mean, can you imagine rejecting your own parents like that, or if you have children, what it might feel like to have your children reject you like that and say, you're not good enough the way that you are, because I don't feel good about me, and you remind me of the shortcomings that I have. So the mother went on, lived her life, and she gradually declined, and finally she died of a broken heart. At the end of the movie, you had this really powerful scene with Mahalia Jackson belting out this really sad, sad song at the funeral. And at the end, here comes Sarah Jane breaking through the police lines to try to get one last glimpse of her mother before the horse-drawn carriage pulled off, saying, Mama, Mama, I really did love you, I'm sorry. But there was nothing she could do to take it back. And so sometimes when we try to be something that we're not, we pay a big price for it. So what I'd like to talk with you about today is I'd like to talk with you today about being who we are, about being the person that we are, about being the I am. Sometimes it's hard for us to be who we are. And when we do, we may find ourselves thinking, you know what? My life would be better if I was a little bit more like so-and-so. Say to yourself, sometimes it's hard being me. But I'm the only one that can do it. So we go out and we start looking around us and we start looking at things, we start looking at people. And I can't tell you all the people who are in the media now because, to be honest with you, I make it a point not to keep up with all the negativity going on TV. But whoever it is that's out there, whether they're a movie star, whether they're a rapper, whether they're a businessman, whoever they are, we take a look at those people and we place them up on a pedestal way up here. And we say, they've got this life. They've got this life that has to be better than mine because look where they are, look what they're doing. And we don't have a clue about what those people have gone through to get there. But what we want is we want the thing that they have. We want the prestige, we want the feeling. We want that feeling of being accepted and loved. I think that I can safely speak for each and every person here that the one thing that we can say that we want out of our lives is that when we make our transition out of this world, that we knew that our being here made a difference. That somebody was touched by the fact that we were here, that we touched somebody and that we didn't just come through this life and be ignored. And there are so many of us who are hurting and suffering because we think that we don't make a difference. We think that in order for us to be somebody, that we have to be somebody else. You know, I can remember when I was growing up, when I was you kids' age and probably even your age, I wanted so bad to be cool. I had lived in North Carolina and my family, my brother and I moved back to New York when I was about 13, 14 years old. And you know, that's a difficult time as it is where you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to develop your identity, and then to have that change in environment like that, it was a lot for me. I didn't dress like the other kids. I didn't have the same kind of clothes they have. I didn't listen to the same music. I grew up in a household where we weren't allowed to listen to secular music. It was considered a sin. So my friends are listening to James Brown and Sly and the Family Stone and Parliament Funkadelic and all that stuff, and I hadn't been allowed to listen to that, and I wanted so badly to be like everybody else. And here I am, this nerdy kid. You know, I'm smart, but that's not what I wanted to be, or at least not entirely. I embraced that, but I still wanted to be something else. So I wanted to try to do and be like they wanted to be, like they were. And you know, at some point we kind of grow out of it, but there are some things that we never quite get over that we carry on with us into adulthood. You know, I've still got some insecurities about the way that I dress, my dancing, my sense of rhythm, the music that I like. But you know what, I've also gotten to a point where I say, that's me and Terry, I love you just the way you are. Call your name out and say whatever your name. Terry, I love you just the way you are. Say it again. Terry, I love you just the way you are. And so we need to learn to become comfortable with ourselves because you know what? There's always going to be somebody out there that's able to do something better than we can do it, that has more money or that has more connections or more of whatever's needed in that particular circumstance. But here's the truth of the matter. Some of those very same people that I looked at and wished that I was like them, those people felt the same way about me. You know, I grew up in my brother's shadow. I have a brother who's about 5 years older than I am. My brother was, and still somewhat is, very athletic. He was a musician and still is a musician. People would say to me, man, how come you run so slow? Your brother runs so fast. My brother was on the track team. They used to call me lead drawers because I ran so slow. And I wanted to be like my brother. But at a certain point, I had to learn that that was not me, that I had to learn to excel and develop the things that are within me. So the thing that I've come to find out is that we're all on a journey. We're all on a journey of self-discovery. And that self-discovery, when we discover ourselves, we discover God. The thing that we're looking for a way for us to express the I am, that part of us that is eternal, that spirit that is God. And when we learn to seek first the kingdom of heaven, to know I am that I am, then our lives will begin to fall in place. So our scripture this morning comes from Acts, chapter 19, verses 11 through 16. And I'm going to be reading to you from the Lambda Aramaic translation. It reads, And God wrought great miracles by the hands of Paul, so that even when the clothes from on his body, pieces of garments, were brought and laid upon the sick, diseases were cured, and even the insane were restored. Now certain Jews who went about exorcising evil spirits invoked the name of our Lord Jesus over those who were possessed, saying, "We adjure you in the name of Jesus whom Paul preaches." And there were 7 sons of one Sceva, a Jew, and the chief of the priests who did this. And the insane man answered them, saying, "Jesus I recognize, and Paul I know, but who are you?" And the insane man leapt on them and overpowered them and prevailed against them, so that they fled out of that house, naked and wounded. I've always found this story a little bit amusing and humorous, because I'm just imagining these 7 guys standing around and this one guy, "Well, who are you?" And then pow! He whooped their tails and threw them out in the street. And you know, life is like that. When we're trying to be something that we're not, life will whoop your behind and throw you out in the street naked and bleeding. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go over this bit of scripture and see what truth that we can find in it that's going to help us define who we are and to live the lives that we want to live. So let's start with Paul. Paul, as we used to say back in the 70s, was a bad cat. Paul was out doing his thing. He was out healing people, he was preaching, he was healing the sick and raising the dead. Paul was about his divine mission that he had gotten from Jesus. And what happens is that these people in this town were looking at Paul and seeing the things that he was doing. Now, the thing that people used to do, especially these exorcists, there was a big market for them because back in those days, they didn't know about, insanity, they didn't know about schizophrenia, they didn't know about diabetes, all these different diseases. They thought that when somebody had some sort of a disorder, that it was an evil spirit that was causing the problem for them. So it was big business if you could cure some of these problems, that people would come to you, they bring their sick, they bring the insane to you, and you could cure them. What would happen is that when you had an exorcist and they heard about somebody else doing something better than they were doing it, they would use that other person's gods, saying, well, their God is stronger than mine. So I'm going to use their God to get done what I need to get done. They, in fact, were focusing on something outside of themselves. And so we have this chief priest named Sceva, who had 7 sons. And we have to ask ourselves, who is Sceva and these 7 sons, and what have they got to do with me? Well, when we take a look at the word Sceva, it actually is derived from Greek. And it's a Greek word that means left-handed. Now, for those of you who know about history and how people who are left-handed are perceived, they're perceived as sinister, and hence we get the word sinister from the Latin sinistra. They're considered evil and confidants of the devil. So when we look at this metaphysically, Sceva is that error consciousness that believes in something other than the oneness that we have with the Christ within. The 7 sons of Sceva are going to be those thoughts, those attitudes, those ideas that are birthed from this error consciousness. And so I've taken the time out to think about, what are these 7 aspects of consciousness? And for those of you that are part of the hip-hop generation, these 7 sons of Sceva are like sucker MCs, trying to go out in front, and instead they got served. All right? I wish Minister Server was here to hear that. Because I come off all straight-laced. I pretty am. I'm a pretty conservative guy, but I got to tell it like it is. All right, so Sceva's got 7 sons. And these 7 sons represent different aspects of consciousness that we demonstrate when we separate ourselves from the Christ that dwells in us. The first one is excuses. You know, when it comes for us to stand up and be who we are, when we don't want to do it, we can find an excuse, and we can come up with some good ones. The thing is that it's easier for us to admire somebody else, to want to be like somebody else, rather than for us to do the work. And so sometimes what we will do is we will get so busy with busyness for the sake of being busy that we block everything out, and we've got these great excuses about why we can't do it. I am so busy, I don't have time to do this. Well, why don't you go back? Oh, I can't go back to school because I'm just too busy. I've got this that I'm involved with, I've got that I'm involved with. But you know, going back to school is going to help you to be what you want to be, what you should be doing with it. I know. But I just can't do it right now. Maybe a little bit later on down the line I can do that. Well, as some of you know, I used to go to the Palace in New York, United Palace, where Reverend Ike was the pastor. Reverend Ike had a saying, "There is nothing so bad as a good excuse. The better the excuse, the worse it is." Son number 2, reluctance. Very often we find that when it's time for us to step up, and then to show out, we get reluctant. We start coming up with all these different things in mind about, well, what if this happens? I'm not quite ready. I'm not educated enough. I don't have the right connections. My family doesn't support me. So we develop this reluctance, and we're afraid to step out. But it's until we're willing to step out and live from the faith that's in us, the faith that each of us has, that we'll be able to see the results that we'd like to have. It's that reluctance that gets in the way that blocks us from the good that we desire to have. Then there's unwillingness. There's that aspect of us that just does not want to do what needs to be done. There's that part of us that says, you know, I want it, but it's too much. It's too much that I have to do to get this. I want what so-and-so has. How many of you like to be rich like Oprah? Raise your hand. The question is, would you want to live Oprah's life? You know, the demands that you would have on yourself for that type of a life, are you willing to do what you have to have what you want to have? You know, we have this rigidity about ourselves that we want things to be exactly a certain way before we'll move forward. We want things to be 100% right, lined up just a certain way, and it's never going to be that way. We also get into this thing where it's, you know what, I don't want to work that hard, I like to just kind of chill and kick back. We want to take it easy, and we don't want to put out the effort to do what it is that needs to be done for us to have what we want to have. So if that's a part of you, let's nip that in the bud right now with an affirmation. I am willing to do whatever I need to do to succeed.
I am willing to do whatever I need to do to succeed.
Let's say that one more time. I am willing to do
whatever I need to do
to succeed. All right. And then the last thing about this unwillingness is that because we're unwilling, we are undisciplined. It's that unwillingness that keeps us from developing the consistency, the habit, the routines that we need to have our lives in order. And so many of us on some level, because we're not willing to pay the price, we're willing to have lives in disorder. And I can tell you from personal experience, when you get your life like this, when it's in disorder, it can be really funky. You can get some stuff coming back to you because you're not keeping up with what you have to do that make you scratch your head and say, how in the world did I get in this place? You know, what am I doing with all this clutter, all of these problems, all of these people after me? It's because we have not been willing to be disciplined about how we handle our business. And our business gets out of order, and then we sit back and scratch our heads and say, why is this happening to me? But in order for you to have the things that you want to have, you must learn to discipline yourself. Dr. Barber always says to us, the first rule of the universe is order. And order comes from discipline. The fourth son of Sceva is self-deception. Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm okay just the way I am. I don't need, he said, I'm killing you, Bobby. We don't want to see the truth about ourselves. We want to pretend as if everything is going along okay. We want to pretend like there's nothing special that we need to do. We want to pretend that we've got it all together. And then life just shows us something different, doesn't it? You know, we look at these other people doing whatever they're doing, and we like to be like they are. Sometimes we want to try to imitate them. And it comes from a sense of insecurity, a sense of, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because I think that's one of the other sons, but that self-deception, that living in a state of denial, that there's nothing wrong with me. And I'm not saying that you need to go around and, you know, downgrade yourself, denigrate yourself, and constantly talk yourself down. We always do that. And the thing is that the person that wants to pretend that everything is all right is actually inside tearing themselves down constantly with the things that they have to say. But at some point, we've got to wake up. We've got to wake up and call a spade a spade. And then we've got to start digging ourselves out of the hole we've created for ourselves. And the way that we do that is by being honest with ourselves. Son number 5, or is this son number 4? I think I might have a little bit. This number 5, okay. Envy. I want to have what you have. You know, if I just had that Mercedes, I'd be special. If I just had that job like my boss has, I'd be able to do everything that they can do. If I could just play the guitar the way that my brother played the guitar, instead of me playing that little wimpy violin that I was playing, I could be a musician and everybody would love me. And I've got to tell you, I did play the violin, and actually I was pretty good. I started when I was in the 4th grade, the 5th grade rather, and when we were in the 4th grade in Charlotte, they would have you declare what instrument that you wanted to play. I wanted so badly to play the clarinet because my cousin played the clarinet. And they had this big assembly where they had the band teacher and the string teacher come in. And I said, I want to play the clarinet. And I was wearing braces at the time. Band teacher looked at me and said, son, I'm sorry, but you need to have teeth in order to do this. You can't have the braces, you can't play. And the tears just welled up in my eyes. So I chose the violin kind of by default. And when I started to play, I found that I had a talent for it. That while my instructor, his name was Mr. Davis, a wonderful man, while he was dealing with the other kids, I couldn't wait on them. I'd get home and I'd practice 2-3 hours a day. And I took the book and I just went on through the book. He's still teaching them open strings and I'm up on, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th finger. And he was so impressed with my initiative and with the talent that I had that he, out of his pocket, paid for me to take private lessons with the concertmaster of the Charlotte Symphony Orchestra. And when I was in the 6th grade, I was first chair, first violin in the All-City Junior Orchestra. Then we came back to New York, and I wanted to be cool. And I didn't think I was going to be too cool walking around with a violin with all these hard rock Negroes walking around. So I didn't want to be who I was, and I stopped playing the violin. Until the day that she transitioned from this world, Alice never let me forget it. So we take a look at other people, we take a look at what they have, what they want, and we think we'll be better off if we can just be a little bit more like they are. And we deny who we are. And in the end, we only hurt ourselves. Then there's insecurity and doubt. We doubt ourselves. We don't have confidence in ourselves that we're going to be good enough for whatever it is that comes along. And see, I have to tell you, when you doubt yourself, you doubt God. Because you doubt the I am that you are. You doubt that presence and power, that spirit that's inside of you. When God made us in the image and likeness of God, God gave us everything that we need to have in order for us to survive and prosper in this world. Say to yourself, I've got everything I need for me to prosper. I've got everything I need to prosper. Because God already put it in me. Then we've got ignorance. Or as some people would say, ignorance. That thing where we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know, and we're not willing to find out that we don't know. One of the hardest things in the world for us to say is, I don't know, because we're afraid of looking bad. And so we try to pretend that we're something that we're not. We try to get out there and front and act like we know when we don't. Now, there's a time and a place for everything, and there's some place that we do need to put on that confidence and to walk out there. But we need to make sure that we are truly grounded and prepared in our truth and what it is that we know before we go out there starting to mess around with stuff that we don't know about. And it takes a strong person to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And part of that ignorance is arrogance. We don't want to look bad. Not me. And we look at this other person and we'll say, I don't need to do things like the way that they do it. I can do it better than they can do it. And we don't have the background, we don't have the training, but our arrogance makes us think that we know. And we don't want to take advice from anybody. We don't want to open up our minds, crack open a book. Most of us would rather spend time out on the internet or on TV watching, Honey Boo Boo or, these different things that make other people, tear other people down, where people are like, backbiting and stabbing each other. And, sometimes that's entertaining. But when we fill our minds up so much of that kind of stuff and not watch anything that's going to, instead of tearing us down, that's going to build us up, we're living in ignorance and we're being arrogant. So then we go out like the sons of Sceva and we get in front of the crazy man. And pow! We get knocked down and we get our behinds whooped. And we're sitting out in the street, and I want to talk about that crazy man a little bit. Because that crazy man is in each and every one of us. That crazy man is life. When life looks at you and see that you're trying to front and imitate somebody else, your consciousness will get crazy on you and kick your behind and leave you out in the cold, naked and wounded. And we'll be so humiliated. But sometimes that's what some of us need. Some of us are just show me children. That the only way that we will learn and come to our senses is by getting that butt whipping. And for some of us, we're like Richard Pryor. We'll go on ahead and whip my butt. That's a butt whooping I'm going to have to take. And life is glad to administer it to you. And I'm not just up here preaching. I've been through all this myself, so this is not just me trying to talk to you. This is my lesson too. So we're at life with this crazy person, this crazy thing going on with us, and it's bringing us back to our senses. So the question that we have is, if we're living this crazy life, and we've been letting our lives be dominated by the 7 sons of Sceva, this error consciousness, how is it that we get back to where we need to be so we can be who we are and we can demonstrate the Christ that we are? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to tell ourselves, I want to be like I am. Let's say that together. I want to be like I am. I want to be like I am. I want to be like I am. Now, the I am that I'm talking about is the capital I am. That spirit, that presence, that power of God that dwells in each and every one of you, and that dwells in me, and that dwells in everybody. Instead of us looking at people outside, we need to be going inside and talking to the I am that dwells in us and saying, Spirit, what is it that you would have me to do today? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And by us starting to do that, we do the thing that we need to do, is that we love and we accept ourselves for who we are, for what we are, and what we need to do. We open ourselves up to have that divine expression, to be open and receptive to our divine purpose about why we're here. Now, you see, when we get back to Paul, I started out with Paul at the beginning of this because, like I said, Paul was a bad cat. Paul had gone through some tremendous things to get to where he was at that point. He had been out preaching the gospel for 2 years, but that's not where Paul started. For those of you that remember, Paul was Saul, the persecutor of the Christians. And his job, his mission in life was to hunt these Christians down, to either put them in jail or to kill them. And he went around zealously doing just that. And he would hunt them down. He was given authority by the chief priests, by the Sanhedrin, to do exactly that. So Paul's out doing his thing, out taking care of his mission. He had facilitated the death of some of the disciples. And he had never met Jesus, but he hated Jesus. And on the road to Damascus, he had an experience. And sometimes that's what each and every one of us need to have, an on the road to Damascus experience. He had a breakdown. He heard this voice speaking to him saying, Paul, why are you persecuting me? Paul, why are you persecuting me? And Paul said, oh, who are you? Pretty much the same question that the insane man answered. Who are you? And the voice said to him, I'm Jesus. And he got instructions about what to do, and for the next 3 days he found himself blind. And sometimes we find that happens to us when we start to come to our senses and realize the mistakes that we've been making. It's difficult for us to see. So we may go through a period where we've got to just shut out how we see everything and go within and commune with that spirit that dwells in us. And that's what Paul had to do. And he followed the instructions that Jesus gave to him. He went where he was told to go. He found Peter and the rest of the disciples and was able to persuade them that he was sincere in his conversion. And with the same zealousness that he persecuted the Christians, he went out and he preached the gospel of Jesus. So let's take a look at some of the things about Paul that we can adopt in our own lives. Number one, Paul knew who he was and why he was here. And he set about pursuing that. The problem with so many of us is that we're off doing things that we don't need to be doing, instead of being focused on our purpose. We don't know why we're here, what it is that we're here to do. So we just kind of drift along. But we need to spend time with ourselves daily, asking ourselves and asking the spirit that dwells in us, why am I here? What is my job? What is it that I'm here to accomplish? And I have to tell you, it doesn't mean that you have to be Oprah. It doesn't mean that you have to be Bill Gates. It doesn't mean that you have to be anybody that's perceived as being way up there. Sometimes the thing for you to do is for you to be the best father to your children that you can be. Sometimes the thing for you to do is for you to be the best janitor that you can be, because it's going to give the kids an environment that they can learn in. Everybody has their own place, and it doesn't mean that we have to be out there trying to have all the bling and live large so that we can make people think that we're somebody that we're not. It's us being true to who we are and what we are, and knowing that whatever it is that we have to do, whatever that Spirit has placed in our heart, whatever it is that we're here to do, that we will prosper and a way will be made for us when we do it. Paul took just basically the clothes on his back and went out and did what he had to do to spread the gospel. And it wasn't always easy for him. But like I said, sometimes it's not easy being me. But I'm the only one that can do it. There were times that he went through misfortune, through bad weather and storms where he was in shipwrecks. There were times that he was beaten and thrown in jail. And I'm not saying that this is what you have to do. But I'm saying that whatever it is that your purpose is, you need to be willing to pursue it wherever it is that it's going to take you, knowing that whatever it is that you need is going to be provided for you when you get there. Knowing that the people that you need will come into your life. Knowing that the resources will show up when you need for them to show up. I think I've shared with everybody here, I know I have on the Daily Source of Light, but I think I've shared it with you here also, that at one point I was working as an accountant, but I didn't have the accounting degree. And my boss told me, you pretty much have gone along as far as you're going to get without that degree. So you need to, he was a Jewish guy, you need to take your tuchus back to school and get yourself an education, get yourself a degree. Well, I didn't really have the money, but I did have the desire, and I recognized the truth in what he had to say. So I went and I investigated schools. I found the City University of New York, Baruch College. The tuition was affordable enough. And I came back to my boss and said, okay, I'm going to school. He said, well, what's it costing you? And I told him, he said, wait a minute. I'm going to see what I can arrange, because we have professional development here, and I can get this paid for 100%. But you better bring me back some good grades and pass those classes. So they paid for my education. It took me 10 years going part-time. But I had a purpose. I knew what it was that I was there to do, what I was going to do with it, and I showed up. Every semester I registered for class, I went to school, I did the classes, did the homework, and then when the semester was over with, I just did it all over again. I had been in college previously, had almost 64 credits toward an associate's degree. I lost most of those. I think I had about 20. When I went back to school, I needed 128 to graduate. It took me 10 years. There were some times that I could not go to school because the work got too demanding, and I had to take a leave of absence. But as soon as I got things cleared up, I got myself back into school, because I knew what it was that I needed to do in order for me to prosper. And school was going to be the thing to enable me to do that. So since I completed school, I've had 4 jobs as a business manager for a school. Jobs which I would not have been able to have had without that degree. So the thing that I'd like for you to know and to take away from this is, whatever it is that you need to do, if you are willing to take the step out there, the universe will support you. And if the universe doesn't support you, that's a message that that thing was not for you, and that you need to look at something else. But we've got to have the willingness, the flexibility, the desire, the belief in ourselves that we can do what we need to do, and that the universe is going to step up and to assist us with the things that we need to have. It's when we have that belief in ourselves, when we have that belief in our purpose, that we can be unstoppable. But first, we have to have that belief in ourselves, and we've got to be ready to move forward. I took a seminar a few days ago, and the teacher had these really wonderful quotes, and I'd like to read a couple of them to you. One of them is by Ann Landers, and it says, "Opportunities are usually disguised as hard work, so most people don't recognize them." We need to recognize that when we are going through challenges in our lives, that they're really opportunities. They're signals for us about areas in which we need to grow. And it's when we reject those problems, when we reject the opportunities, when we reject them, coming with the 7 sons of Sceva consciousness, that life gets crazy on us and beats us up. When we come to life humble, open, and receptive for all the good that life has to bring to us, for the lessons that we need to learn, and to be open to getting the lesson and to prospering and to finding new ways to deal with the issues that we have, we'll be able to move along and move up in our lives. So I'm going to close out and just say to you that when you're faced with challenges in your life, when things get difficult, when things get hard for you to handle, the answer is not for you to try to be like somebody else or think that you need to be like somebody else. But the answer for you is to turn within, to ask what it is that you need to learn from this, and to see this challenge as an opportunity. And that when things get really hard, as Whitney said in the song that we heard, find your strength and love, and know that God has got your back. I love each and every one of you. Have a wonderful afternoon.